plan on living off-grid, is it possible that you could be denied a mortgage? We're going to find out right here on Cabin Life. I'm Glenn.
I'm Maureen.
And today we're talking about buying land in unorganized townships right here in Ontario, Canada.
We'll be talking about home and property insurance and how the changing real estate landscape is opening up opportunities for tiny homes.
In a previous video, we were talking about buying land and getting your home inspected so that you could have it done according to code. And someone wrote in, they asked the question, would your home be insured if you didn't have inspection done? It's a good question.
We've spoken with people who've moved from urban areas up into the unorganized townships, and we were speaking with them how they made the changes. And one of the comments they made was about insurance. They said they found that the insurance brokers up in this area, being much more familiar with how things work in unorganized townships, they were able to get much better insurance if they were able to get insurance at all.
A lot of the insurance brokers don't really know the lay of the land as far as what goes on in an unorganized area, what's entailed, what amenities are there, what isn't available, and the availability of a fire department. Are you going to have a wood stove installed? There's all kinds of different things that affect insurance. Even climate change. There's now climate change mitigation for forest fire prevention and things that you can do with your house in order to mitigate that. Things to prevent floods, wind, all that kind of thing. So it's a changing landscape as far as that goes. And we have also found that it's best to use someone local, a local insurance company, which will handle our home and property insurance.
Now, the rates that they charge may be quite different compared to where you lived before, where you're living now, because there's a lot of different things that affect insurance differently. One good example is your fire departments. Like generally in a built-up urban area, fire departments are much closer together, so that it doesn't take as long to get to a home if there's a fire.
Response time is generally a lot quicker.
A lot quicker. We're here in unorganized areas because we are remote in some cases. It could take quite a bit longer for the fire department to get here. Number one is distance, and number two is their volunteer fire departments. So they're not sleeping at the firehouse and living there like they do in the urban areas.
So often if a fire breaks out in a remote area and they've got to go down the back roads just to get to the fire, we often call those foundation savers, basically is what they are.
Now keep in mind, this could affect your rates quite a bit. So it's a good idea to also do your due diligence looking at insurance costs before you put an offer on a property.
Now our experience has been when we called up an insurance company for home and property insurance, we have found that they, asked the gamut of questions and whatnot, very knowledgeable on what they want to cover and so forth. And we have found that there's been no problem in getting the home insurance, property insurance and whatnot. And we had no building inspection done. So, to answer the viewer's question, in our case, no, the absence of a building inspection did not affect whether you were, approved for insurance or not. So as far as we know, there's no effect on that. I suppose if you got approval for insurance and something happened later down the road that you had to put in a claim in, their insurance inspector would then come look at the problem. And if they find that, things weren't built to code or that kind of a thing, then I suppose that could come back to bite you if you haven't had the proper things installed and whatnot. But it doesn't necessarily mean that just because you didn't have an inspection that you don't qualify, right?
Right.
All right, let's talk about off-grid for a moment, shall we?
Sure. Like some people consider unorganized townships synonymous with recreational land. A lot of people also consider unorganized townships synonymous with off-grid living, which is not the case.
No, just because you're in an off-grid situation doesn't mean that you're in unorganized land. And just because you live on unorganized land doesn't mean that you live off-grid. So, just like recreational property, it's not the same terminology.
Yes, like most properties that are along the main roads do have hydroelectric service available to them.
And the further off you go from those main roads, you may find that the hydroelectric services are not available. There's just no power lines running along the roadside anymore. In which case, then it's more attractive to go with the alternative, which is an off-grid lifestyle.
Now, in some cases on those roads where there is no electrical service available at the time, you may be able to request to have that brought in if that's economically viable.
Yeah. So living off the grid today, whether you're in an unorganized township or an organized township, it's becoming more attractive and more popular to go with the alternative lifestyle of off-grid living. And as technology improves, the costs come down. So it's definitely more within reach to go with solar, go with wind, and water power. So yes.
One word of caution we like to put out there is we've spoken to some families who moved into an area and decided to go off grid. And they thought with the plan that they would use their personal finances to buy the land, start building, build something a little bit more simplistic, get their solar system in, their alternative energy system in, and then go to the next step when they want to build larger or a new house, they would go with a mortgage. Now, what we have found and what people have found in this area is that when living off grid, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get a mortgage.
And the reason for that is because banks generally and financial institutions generally don't like to risk their investment money in an off-grid property, because in the event of a foreclosure and the home and property comes back to the bank or financial institution, they find it a lot harder to put that on the market and, for resale. So if they're hooked up to the hydroelectric power and they have the water and so forth, it just makes it more sellable for the bank. So that's, you're going to have if you're going to go for a mortgage, the best thing to do would be to perhaps hook up to the hydroelectric power and have that come to your door, have your home wired by code for that purpose. Then when you go to apply to the bank for your mortgage, there's nothing to stop you, from acquiring that mortgage. You can still do the off-grid then and continue with your solar power going. Doesn't mean you have to turn your lights on from the electric power.
It would be nice to think that the banks and financial institutions will be a little bit more progressive in their opinions of real estate values when it comes to alternative energy, because there are a lot of nice homes and cottages that are on alternative energy and that they function quite well without being on grid.
Completely outfitted with the alternatives. It's a smaller footprint in general. Maybe the cost outlay may be in the beginning, maybe more, but in the long run, often it pays off. When it comes to buying land in unorganized townships, there's been huge changes in the real estate landscape in the last 10 years or even in the last 5 years.
The needs of the buyers have changed. A lot of people who are looking for property to buy are turning to unorganized areas. They're also looking at smaller ecological footprints, buying smaller land to be more economical.
And this has opened the door for those that are interested in settling into a tiny home.
This has led to the development of tiny home construction businesses setting up, where in the past tiny homes were considered more of a DIY project, creating your own tiny home on wheels type of thing. But now with the construction industry taking them on board, they're being more safer. They're built to the building code, more acceptable to municipalities and to property owners, that they are an opportunity to have an economical house. They're attractive, And that has brought a lot of interest from municipalities and property owners to look into the viability of tiny homes.
Some municipalities, including unorganized ones and organized municipalities, have actually accepted and begun to embrace the tiny home communities that are sprouting up, and those that are interested in buying a tiny home to reside in.
I was surprised when I was reviewing the Ontario Building Code that they actually include tiny homes in the building code now.
And just because the home has been built according to code doesn't necessarily mean that it's still like it's going to be automatically allowed in a certain township. You still have to check to make sure that the tiny home is something that you can have on a given piece of property. With so many tiny homes coming on the market, and it's really becoming a trend in some localities. Now, with tiny homes being the structures that they are, and as good as they are, built to code, etc., what it makes me wonder is with them being mobile and whatnot, are there restrictions, and will the bank approve a mortgage?
That's a good question. And if you're interested in looking into purchasing a tiny home, I would suggest that you contact your bank and see if they will mortgage it.
Got a question or a comment? We'd love to hear from you. Hope you found the video helpful.
Give it a thumbs up and subscribe for updates.
That's all for this one. I'm Glenn.
I'm Maureen.
We'll see you next time. Over and out.
Take care.